So I recently got my hands on an Audio-Technica AT-LP 120XBT record player thanks to my good friends over at Sweetwater. The reason I got it is because I want to get more into sampling. Hip-hop has had a huge impact in my production journey and in my taste, and so it felt right to finally explore the roots of a genre and a culture that I admire so much. Now, the question here might be, well, cool, but you don't need a record player for that. There are plenty of samples online to do the same thing. You're right, but as someone who grew up creating mixtapes on cassettes and CDs, there is something special about getting in there with physical equipment that cannot be matched. Now, at the end of the day though, I am a Studio One user and I intend to use a hybrid workflow because working in a DAW and specifically Studio One gives me a ton more control. So let me show you how to set up a record player in Studio One for best results, and then of course we'll cook up a quick beat with a sampled record. Before we dive in though, if you are a Studio One user and you want to make your sessions way more efficient, then go ahead and download my free productivity macro toolbar. I'll tell you more about it later, but for now you can get it by clicking the first link down below. Okay, so let's talk about connections. Regardless of whatever record player you have, a lot of times they're going to come with a USB-A to USB-B cable. Now this cable is very common in a lot of production hardware, and it's basically used to connect it to your computer. Now that's cool, but I would argue that a better solution, a better alternative, is to get something like this, a TS to RCA male cable. This will allow you to connect the record player through the RCA outputs and then connect that into your audio interface through the line inputs, which gives you way more control. So take a look here. I have an Apollo interface and I have my record player connected to inputs 5 and 6. And so once you have this done, all you simply have to do is go back to Studio One, go over to Studio One, Preferences, go over to the Song Setup tab or button here on the bottom, head over to Audio Inputs and Outputs, Input tab, and then here all you simply have to do is click Add Stereo to create a stereo software input and then link that to the inputs, the physical hardware inputs that you connected your record player to. And so I've already done this here. So you can see that I have a stereo input connected to 5 and 6 on my Apollo, and I even named it record player. Ultimately, what this allows me to do is that I can now bring in an audio track, right? Just a regular audio track, and then set the input to my record player input, meaning that I can now sample and record directly from my turntable, and it goes right into Studio One. And so all that's left to do now is to make a beat. Okay, so my wife is big on going to estate sales and she knows that I recently got this and she got me a few records. And so this is the one that I'm gonna be using today. So first things first, let's go ahead and turn this on, unlock the arm here. And there was a song, I believe on the B side here, that might be really good. So with the record in place, let's go ahead and start recording in Studio One. Let's start spinning the record and drop the needle. Okay, so I think that should be good. Okay, so with the sample in Studio One, the first thing we have to do is we have to detect the tempo. Luckily though, Studio One now has a new detect tempo feature that they added in Studio One 7. And so to do that, you can right click, go over to audio, and then detect tempo. However, I've also added this now to the productivity toolbar. So if you go to sample and hit detect tempo here, it'll do the exact same thing. I guess while we're here, let me tell you a little bit about the macro toolbar. So macros, if you're unfamiliar, are a bunch of commands that you can string together to basically execute a complex task with a single button click. And so what I've done here is that I've compiled some of the best production features that Studio One has to offer, plus I've added some custom macros of my own to create the productivity toolbar that basically just allows you to work faster, work more efficiently, and honestly just get to what we all want to do, which is make music. Now, I'll be using this toolbar for the remainder of this video, so you'll get to see more of what it does. But again, it is totally free, and if you want it, all you have to do is click the first link down below. But okay, back to the beat here. Now, if an audio sample has a set tempo, then if you open up the inspector window here, it'll just tell you what it is under the file tempo setting. It'll have a number. However, if it has a variable tempo or multiple tempos, then it will say map. If this had a set tempo, then all I simply would have had to do is go over to the sample section here of the toolbar, chop sample, and then probably hit like a fourth. This would chop it up on the grid, on the beat, kind of like what a lot of people do with the MPC. You know, you chop it up at the click track, and then it sends it over to impact. However, because we don't really have a set tempo here, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna chop this up manually and then send it over to impact. Okay, so let's go ahead and chop this up. I'm gonna switch my grid over to maybe 64th. Get really in there. That's about where I want the beginning and the end to be. However, here's a problem. I kind of only want the vocal chop. I really don't want the instruments in the background. But again, Studio One has solved this for us because they've now introduced stem separation in Studio One 7. And so to do that, just right click on the audio event, go over to audio, and then separate stems. However, so you don't have to do all this crazy menu diving all the time, I've also included it in the newest version of the productivity toolbar. So sample and then separate stems. From here, you can select what you want to separate. And so I'll hit OK and let it do its magic. From here, we can start chopping a little bit more. I'm gonna go in here and get really surgical. I want that. Right there, I wanna chop right there. Maybe like right there as well. Right here. And right here. So once we have the chops that I want, it is as simple as now selecting them, going back over to the sample section, and then send to new impact. From here, click on the first one, click on the last one, set it to choke group number 1 so they don't overlap. And then from here, we just have to create some sort of pattern that we want to make. Before we do this though, I do want to get the drums down first. For this, I am using another instance of impact, and I do have some drums already pre-selected. Something like that. And so now if we double click on this, we can see the notes in the note editor. Now I don't want to be super rigid, but I did play a little bit loose. And so if you open up the quantize panel by clicking the Q here, I can set to my quantize. Let's do maybe like 80 and like, I don't know, like a 10 or 15% swing, something along those lines, and then hit apply. All right, let's add an open hi-hat. Okay, so with the drums in place, let's actually get to creating this sample chop. Now there's a bajillion ways to do this, but I'm just gonna create a very simple chop just for the sake of brevity here. Now from here, I'm gonna commit the sample, so Command plus B will do that for you. Okay, so let's process this a little bit. I do wanna filter it, so I'm gonna go back over to my toolbar here, hit the EQ section and add a Pro Q3. I don't have the Q4. If you guys have it and you love it, let me know and I'll cop it. Okay, from here I need a reverb. I'm gonna opt for my favorite of all time, the vintage verb. Now my problem here is that when I recorded the sample off the vinyl, it had the natural sort of crackles and, you know, all those little nice nuances. I think the separation of the stems removed all that. And so funny enough, I want to add it back. And so I'm going to use an RC20, not the same thing as, you know, the original, but. And then last but not least, I don't know, let's have some fun here. I'm gonna do a Murda Melodies, which is a multi-effects plugin that you can get. I believe this is off the Slate bundle. And so a little bit of spread, right? I don't know. There's no method to this madness. I'm just tweaking knobs. See what sounds good. Oh, a little bit of wobble. Yeah, that sounds cool. This needs a crash. Let me open up my browser. Sounds cool, but nowhere near where I want it to be. And so I think from here, I want to layer this up with some sort of like chords. Now, Studio One does have a detect chord feature. So with my instrumental loop, I can just click on it, then go over to the macro toolbar and hit extract chords. As a matter of fact, you could also open up the chord track here, click on this little button, then input chord, and it'll show you what chords you're playing, okay? And so here you have two options. You could either play them yourself, or if you don't have a MIDI keyboard or whatever, you can quite literally just drag them down to any MIDI event. Now, because I did rearrange the order of these chops, I am going to have to play these myself, but at least now I know what I should play. Okay, so I found this patch that I like. Check it out. But I do want to mess around with the sustain that I played. I want them to end at a specific part. I want to go wow. All right, so check this out. I found this other patch here that I think could work. So let's go ahead and copy the MIDI. And so from here, we just click on the event, hold the Option or Alt to drag down to duplicate it. Let's get rid of this, let's get rid of these. And then from here, we can use my other toolbar, the Beatmaker's toolbar, quantize perfect notes, but I want them to end here. Nice. And so if I play that with the original keys, we get this here. Yeah. And so all I think we need now is just a bass line, if I'm being totally honest. Now, I do have a bass guitar right over there, but I don't feel like plugging all that up. So I'm just going to use a VST here. There's a bunch of good ones, but I am using Moto Bass by IK Multimedia. I think it sounds really good. So we're just going to use this. Okay, so the last thing I think I want to do here is I want to pitch all of this down. Now, here's a cool thing. I'm going to show you a little trick. This used to be a pain in the butt, but with Studio One 7, we now got the ability to do a global transpose of the entire beat. And to do it, it's super simple. All you got to do is click on all your tracks that you used in the beat. So for me, it'd be the sample chop, the 2 keys, and I'm holding the Command or Control key to select multiple at the same time. So the bass, and we can leave the drums by themselves, but then open up your inspector window and then hit follow global transpose. Once you do that, head down to the bottom to the transpose parameter, and then let's type something different. Let's do maybe like -3. And as you can see here on the key, it brought everything down from C minor to A minor. And now our beat sounds like this. And so once you're set on the new key, which I think I am, then all you have to do is right click on that same parameter and select freeze global transposition, because right now we're hearing the new key, but we still have the notes from the previous key. And so once you do that, check it out. All our new notes shift down to A minor. Super cool. But that's it for this one, my friends. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you learned something. And once again, huge thank you to Sweetwater for sending over the gear. I am over the moon and I cannot wait to dive more into the world of sampling. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, do me a huge favor and hit that like button and maybe even subscribe. It's free. And if you want to see another Studio One video, specifically about all the new features that came included in Studio One 7, then you can click this video right over here.